Good day, beautiful soul family, and welcome back to the discovery of the miracles beneath the surface. All the honor and all the glory and praise goes to our Heavenly Father in King Yeshua's name. Beautiful soul family, this is another conversation. Something to bring forth an observation in a certain area that I think is it's phenomenal. All the honor and all the glory and praise goes to the Most High Yah. It was a day ago. Maybe 1 or 2 days ago, and I was looking into certain things such as interior designing and such, and I kind of like those things. And so as I was looking at how people were doing interior designing their homes, I've come to find that in each video that I was watching, the square footage of their apartment was small. 500 square feet, 450 square feet, 600 square feet, and so on and so forth. And I was thinking to myself, why is it so small? Now in New York City, they have small square footage apartments. And even though there is a small square footage, they still paying high in the rent. We're talking like $2,000 here in New York City. It even gets worse in certain locations such as Manhattan. But this is not just running short or stopping short at New York. This is going on all over the place. How is it, however, that in a world, okay, we're really, as I've mentioned in prior messages, the earth is not the world. The world is very limited, okay? In this world where it is still massive. It's not as massive as the earth, but this world is still massive. Now, when we're looking at the matrix, right? The matrix of this world, it will take something and either magnify it or constrict it. It will confine it. And so what Yahuwah was showing me, and it was a question. It's like, one, how come people are paying more for small square footage? And it's almost like the continuum, the consistency of that. And they're making peace with it, because this is what we do. Us human beings, we work with what we got. And then another thing came to mind. Now there are millionaires, really, let's get beyond the millionaires, really. The billionaires and the trillionaires, okay? They're living in mansions. We're talking about 10 bedrooms, 8 baths, plus or minus, all right? It is beyond the 4 bedrooms. It is definitely beyond the studio apartments and the 1-bedroom apartments. And the thing is like, you will see a billionaire. Let's go ahead and add millionaires. You will see these people in these big mansions, these big houses, and it will only be them. Now, what's so interesting, and thank you, glory, hallelujah, this message, this observation is about the perimeters, is about territory. and how it's getting smaller and smaller. And as certain people, let's just say millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires, right? They are doing the most. They're wicked. I'm just going to come out and say it. Their inventions are wicked. What they do is wicked. They come against the Most High Yah. Sometimes I feel like they go into the Holy Scriptures to see what they shouldn't do, so as to make that money. And then the more people that they get involved, the more people that they influence, the more they become rich. And so they are living in the big mansions. They're living in the big houses. They're not working for people that work for them, okay, who are just trying to live their life, just trying to do the right things, just trying to keep their nose above the water. Prevention of drowning. Good-hearted people, for the most part, just trying to do what they can to stay afloat. And some people, they put in the work, a good work, right? But other people, they put in the work to come against others, which I don't understand. Because this system is against humanity. It's not for humanity. But anyhow, what I saw was how the enslaved is like a donkey. Those that are enslaved, there are certain ones that will betray in order to get ahead. So even though all of them are being enslaved, certain people have come to the point of desperation where they will go ahead and try to put someone else under the bus or try to make matters worse for others just so that they can be at a higher elevation. But the truth is they're still seen as enslaved. They will still get but so far. But now the people who are noticing will know that they cannot be trusted. Beautiful soul family. This is happening in humanity. Or humanity itself. It's not just about a nation or nationality. It's not just about a nation or a nationality. This is about humanity itself. So they start small and then they expand. Okay? So the thing is what Yahuwah, thank you, Father, by the means of his Ruach HaKodesh, in terms of observation, and I was just looking at, and I'm still in the midst of looking at it, but he's talking about the internet and the evolution, the evolution of the internet as it was 1.0, how it was stagnant and everything was very much fixed. This was enough, a little bit, to get people's attention. But really, this program was a military program that's been out for a very long time. Now, I've talked about the internet. I've talked about virtual reality and all these different things in prior messages. But it's just so interesting, okay? It's so interesting as we see how certain wicked inventions evolve and how they're utilized not to help the general population, but to make them evolve in such a way as well. So he was explaining how it went from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, where we're having more of an interaction. Now, as I said in the very beginning, there are certain inventions where we have the cell phone, but the cell phone, maybe I didn't say it yet, but the cell phone, actually I said it in a prior message, the cell phone is like a smaller model of a TV, a program device, also a tracking device, okay? And as we're seeing how all of these different things are coming together, they're tracking and they're programming, they're gathering algorithms, they make the product, you see, they bring out something that they were working on in behind the scenes, and now they want it to be more interactive. So they give them a little, like a training wheels, and then they want them to be more interactive. So they plant the seed, they watch how it grows, and then they need it to be more interactive. And then, and the 2.0 is we're the product. They're gathering information from us to understand how to curtail. This is what I mentioned in a prior message, how there are certain things that we consume, right, that actually weaken our mind. Now, when you look at something being weakened, it is made to be more palpable. Now, when it's more palpable, it's more able to be manipulated. Man, hands, manipulate, change, and form. So they don't want a strong mind. That's when they utilize the bucking system. Okay? So anyhow, as we're looking at all these different things, and we're looking at the evolution of internet and how they plant the seed in their subconscious plane, and they work so much behind that, so much subliminals, consistency, the continuum of the consistency, and advertisements, and the things we like, and the peer pressure that is put upon us by the means of one another. Peer pressure, right? And indoctrinations in schools. Everything is made to seem as though it's for us. It's safe. But is it? And the answer is no. Because they make it seem like we are improving, and that in itself is like a mask. It's a mirage, a fantasy, okay? And really the total opposite is happening. So anyways, beautiful soul family, the Most High Yah was showing me, and this was a day or so ago, about perimeters, parameters, territories, square footage, and how, and I mentioned in the prior message about coming out of the box. They want you to be in a box. We notice this by the means of fish. You put a fish in a small tank, it will only grow as much. You put that same fish in a bigger tank, and it's going to grow bigger. And so that's the thing. In order to be used, you have to be kept in a small box. If you do not know about the external portions of a box, all you will be doing is being concerned about the inner parts of the box. And see, that's what they want. Now, when looking at the square footage, when looking at so many different things, and I was looking at the people like the billionaires, it's only them or maybe their family, but it's not a big family, right? And in that, and that's here in America, because in international waters they do things differently. They have big estates, but their family is there. And so because their family is together on those big estates, none of them have to worry about rent and mortgage. Okay? So anyhow, in America, however, when we look at how a person leaves their home and then they have their own place, the millionaires, and trillionaires, they have large estates. They have multiple estates. And they don't even visit them on a regular. They will live in houses that have 10 I would say 4 or 5 plus bathrooms, but what do they need that for? They will have multiple cars. Now, as I mentioned this, don't get it twisted. I'm not jealous. I'm not envious at all. Because the thing about it is, so you have 10 cars. What do you need 10 cars for? I remember in the past, where there was an MTV show, and it was like, it was showing all these different entertainers, these celebrities, okay, and they would show off their beautiful homes, where later on it come to find that they didn't even really live in those homes. They were showing off a way of living that the celebrities lived in, and if they did live in those homes and spent all that money to get those things, they really didn't own it. And they hardly were there to enjoy it. Now, when I think about that, as we're listening to this together, beautiful soul family, what is the point of having those mansions if they're not there most of the time, if at all? They're in the studio. They are maybe on location or wherever, constantly producing, maybe in a movie, maybe in making another song that has been controlled. They can't even be creative. Or maybe some are picked because they are so desperate that they will do anything. They won't conflict with their agenda. So they utilize certain people. You know, when you're looking at all of this, when we are looking at all of this, we see how in-depth the control is. Now, as I mentioned, they do so much to affect the subconscious plane. So planting the seeds in the subconscious plane to where over time with repetition is how they're watering it and nourishing it until it grows. And then when it's in front of your face, it has already been part of your emotional portion of self. You don't fight it. You embrace it. So that's how indoctrination is. So what I thought was so interesting, and I don't want to veer off too much, and I probably have, but this is about parameters, and how the general population is becoming happy with the small. The general population that works for others, that puts forth the work, and they're being separated from their families. They don't even have time to take a vacation. They don't know what it is to not be working hard, because they realize that, okay, not only do I have one job, I need to have 2 jobs to make it. And then they may even have a 3rd job, and they're still at the same point. Still wondering how they're going to get food, how they're going to get drinks, so on and so forth. Now, the thing about a beautiful soul family is that they're in these small square footage homes working hard, but then when they pay off all their bills, I like to call them alliances, they don't have much. So what is that? That's enslavement. This is why there are certain people who say, you know what, they're at a point of desperation, so they will do certain things to have a little bit more money in their pocket. And this is a sad thing, but it happens more and more. They acquiesce because they realize, they're saying, well, I can't beat the system, so I might as well join the system. Now, These are people who do not have a relationship with the Most High Yah. So anyways, as they're getting people, the billionaires are not working for the people, and they are in large estates. And the people who are actually doing the work are in small cells. Now, as I look at the dimensions of the cells, it was saying 6.5 by 7 point something. And then Yahuwah was telling me what is the dimensions of a prison. And the prison has got the same type of numbers working, but one is in inches, which is the cell phone, and the other one is by the means of feet. So when a person is in prison, they're there because they did wrong. Okay? When they're in prison, this is all they got: a cot and some walls and a definite gate that locks. And in their mind frame, however, their conscious plane is even more constricted. Some people suffer from, there's this term called where they would do the same crime, or they would get institutionalized mentality, where they've had more experience being locked up than being free. So when they're free, they do whatever to get back into being locked up. Now, hold on to that for a moment, okay? So when people who are not in prison, they are in these small type apartments. And as I mentioned, we try to make the best with what we got. So there are people who are working hard, 1, 2 jobs, and they don't have time for themselves. They don't have time to breathe. They don't have time to think. And they're working for people who do some shady stuff behind the scenes. Now, the people that do the shady things behind the scenes, who have a lot of money, who have people working for them, okay, they're the ones. Remember, I said that this is an inverted world that deflects. They're the ones that really should be in those smaller parameters, but it's the opposite. So people who are in the small square footage houses, apartments, they don't have enough space to where they can grow, to where they can relate to being free. Their freedom, their mentality in itself is conditioned. So they're like, I paid $2,000 for this apartment, but look what I'm able to do with it. Look what I'm able to do in the shoebox. Whereas their CEOs that they're working for is living in houses, in mansions, owning their own land, so on and so forth, and they're taking vacations. They can take a vacation, come back, and then go on another vacation. They go to meetings where they're around the same type of people, doing the same shady stuff, but they're the ones that have the freedom. And the ones that are not living a shady lifestyle, they're in a cardboard box. They're in parameters that are small, restricting their growth. And then we have the cell phone. Now, cell phone and prison are pretty much alike. Okay, with the cell phone, however, with how it's a tool that will make you feel like you are able to stream so much information, but it will physically keep you stagnated. So even though you are in a 500 square footage apartment, You're in your phone, and on the conscious plane and subconscious plane, you think you are expanded in territory. But it's only in the constructs of one's mind, meaning the fantasy. So instead of being in a huge a place that has a lot of square footage, they're stuck on their phone. They're in a virtual reality where virtually, mentally, they're expanded. So in your mind, you're on the phone, you're streaming, you're doing so many different things, but physically, you're in a shoebox. And it's getting smaller and smaller, to where it becomes a luxury to be able to walk around in a studio apartment and spending $2,000+ per month. Eating foods that's GMO, 3D printed. More and more, it's becoming artificial. You know, I bought this in a prior message years ago, and it was about a movie during a time frame. It's Pride and Prejudice. And they were courting, or they were not courting, but they were trying to find suitors. And they were like so excited. They were like, oh my goodness, he makes 500 a year, or I think 500 a month. He makes 1,000. And it's because, well, there were certain things that were involved, if you catch my drift. When you think about melanin and how it's more valuable than gold, it was backed by enslavement. But anyhow, nowadays they're moving from that dollar to digital. Everything's being shifted into the digital. There are even people buying digital land, digital currency, digital this, digital that, trying to figure out how they can move, and not really trying. I think they know how. The mere fact that they think it's still a living being when they can move their consciousness into a computer. This is something really that is old. They've been doing these things. Anyhow, my point is this. The ones that do the shady business, they are not put in a shoebox. But the ones who are living their life, trying to make ends meet, they're in the shoebox. They're the ones in the cell phone, in a cell, in a prison, where their body is not moving. We are meant to be moving beings, bringing forth newness. But they have made it to where people were stuck in cycles for longer periods of time, going from one season to another season in the same cycle, where they don't have the truth. They don't see themselves as free individuals. And they're relying on systems, the beast system, that is portraying the general population as being ones that cannot do anything without manipulators. The narcissist. And so, beautiful soul family, they want to control. Look, they did this, they're doing this indoctrination in schools. We see how there is a similarity in the school buses, in the lunch, breakfast system, in the schools, the curriculums, and so on and so forth. But they don't want certain people. Where they don't want certain people to utilize their imagination. Certain people, when according to their DNA, there's so much information lying dormant that is access to them if they just rely on our Abba Yah. He opens doors. He brings clarity and truth. But for those who are shut out of that, and a matter of fact, they will have a system. This is why we have cameras and audios and certain things, because it's always a continuum of gathering information. Why? Because they don't have raw resources. They steadily know how to take and mask as their own, but without the people, really, they don't have anything. They know how to manipulate. They know the loopholes. And for people who are just tired of, it's like a kill or be killed, right? So they don't want to be killed. So as I mentioned, they don't heal. They become the oppressor. These are those that sold their souls to have money and luxuries, and they come against those who still have it. How do we get out of this? Because this information is quite on the heavy. How do we get out of this? Well, we build our relationship with the Most High Yah. He said He is faithful and true, that He will provide a way out for those who are tempted by the things that are common to man. Now, the thing about it is that they said what things are common to man. They always try to have the control to keep the power flowing to them. They keep the power flowing to them. And it's about, really, all of this is about gaining our relationship, rebuilding our bridge, our connection, being in tune with Yahuwah. This will always be the answer, because our Abba Yah is providing that way out. And that's really why there's a lot of distractions. Certain people are influencers because they may do things behind the scenes that nobody knows how they're getting their information, okay? But then they present it as their own. They will go ahead, and these are people that are doing things that they're not purposed to do. And when you look at the detail, you see the devil, and you see why certain things are used. Certain people are influencers because they are able to control what they do and how they do it. And those who are really called to do such things, they are shadow banned, they are blocked. You know, if this was just still, they are followed. Gang stalked. If this was just on the internet, I can understand that. But these spawns will follow you. They will clone your phone. They will track you. They will even put people around you to listen to when you're doing, what you're doing, when you're leaving, what you're eating, to torment. I talked about this in the prior message, dealing with gang stalkers and their different phases of torment. Look, when our King and Savior was in front of a man that was possessed with legions, those legions said, "Have you come early to torment?" What does that mean? That means they know that what they sow is what they reap. So they utilize certain gang stalkers to torment. And this is what the children of the Most High Yah goes through. Those who are called to bring out the truth. It's a constant battle. Is it fair? No. It's not meant to be fair. But this is what happens. You'll be surprised who does the following, who's doing the tracking. Sometimes they would get in their own vehicles and do the tracking themselves, do the following themselves, hoping that they won't be seen. But by the grace of the Most High Yah, by the means of his Ruach HaKodesh, you notice he lets his children know. Nothing that they do is a surprise. Nothing that they do is incognito. But we know that the vengeance belongs to Yahuwah. And we must be obedient. And trust our Abba Yah has got it all taken care of. Now, beautiful soul family, this is a to be continued, because, you know, there's so much that is there for us to observe. These are these fine lines. This is the contrast. And we need to pay attention to the contrast, because it really is telling. It is the fine line that shows the details. It confirms that our Abba Yah has been giving us the truth, has been forewarning us. Abba Yah did not create us to fit in the shoebox. He didn't create us to be in lack. He created us to be abundant. But in this inverted, deflective world, those who should not be behind bars or in prisons or in small square footages, and those who shouldn't be in those mansions are put there. It's almost like they're gatekeeping it from those who are deserving of it. Those who choose not to be accountable. It's a rigged system. But with our Abba Yah, there is a way out. A way of living righteously, humbling ourselves in meekness. Now, the people in the world would look at humbling and meeking oneself as being put in a box, but they're the ones that inherit the earth. So until the next observation, conversation, clarity, message, may Yahuwah open up your eyes in these interesting times.